Welcome back to another episode of Believe in TCU. I'm Zion Trammell here with Seth Dowdle. We've got another TCU football episode for you all today. Seth, it's been a week since we've hopped on here. How are we doing? How are we feeling?
Oh, I'm doing fine. You were gallivanting around California, leaving us out to dry over here. Breaking news is breaking left and right, and Zion's probably on the Incredicoaster, just phone off, not caring.
It was nice to get away from the sports world for a little bit, and then I came back yesterday, and the news doesn't stop. The news cycle does not stop, and it hit me immediately upon my return to Texas with the news that TCU quarterback Josh Hoover is entering the transfer portal, according to Pete Thamel and multiple sources confirming this news. Josh Hoover's out.
He's gone. And he confronted himself on his Instagram. He posted a little thingy-mabobber.
Yeah,
a Photoshop graphic. Maybe he made it on Canva. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know if he has an Adobe Photoshop subscription or not. But, things in Fort Worth are not mellow, Zion, contrary to popular belief.
I don't know if that's popular or if that's just a couple people thinking that. Yeah. This news comes just a week after Kendall Briles departing for South Carolina. The Frogs got a new offensive coordinator in Gordy Samus, and then the next thing you know, Josh Hoover's on his way out. I mean, initially my first reaction was like, "Whoa, okay, wow, that's big news," but it didn't really surprise me, honestly. I think in this world of the transfer portal and all that and NIL, it's you kind of expect players to be on 1-year contracts. We've kind of talked about that a couple times. Expecting a player to stay beyond a year is not super realistic. It depends. Obviously, some situations, winning national championships certainly helps, or having a successful program helps you keep players around. But hey, when you have a TCU team that went 8-4, finished 9th in the Big 12, and they finished strong playing in the Alamo Bowl, it's a good bowl game for sure. But it wasn't the level of success that TCU's had they've been used to. And under Josh Hoover in particular, it's not been amazing. So no, it didn't really surprise me that Josh Hoover left. What was kind of your reaction to it all?
Not surprised, not really shocked either. Was not something, I don't know if I was, expecting it to happen though. I had kind of, felt, after Lenora Sellers announced that he was going to come back at South Carolina, because obviously your first inclination when Kendall Briles leaves is, okay, is Josh Hoover going to follow him? And then, Lenora Sellers announces that he's going to stick around in Columbia for another season instead of going to the draft or going, to Miami or someplace like that. It's like, okay, well, South Carolina's got their quarterback. So he's probably not going to follow Kendall. But then, he enters the transfer portal anyway. And it doesn't surprise me because, well, we don't know what the money situation's like. Josh Hoover is a quarterback who is going to demand, I'd say, a pretty hefty price. And whether TCU is willing to pay that price is something, that we might find out at some point down the line, or maybe we won't. There's also, the whole point of like, does he drive with Gordy Samus's system? Is that an offensive coordinator that he wants to play under? And we don't know the answer to that question. Right now, it seems like all things are indicating that no, he didn't want to stick around and play for Gordy Samus. And those are all things that are completely understandable. His offensive coordinator that was here all 3 years that he was the quarterback at TCU is gone. And so if he doesn't want to play in a new offensive system here, that's totally his prerogative. If he wants to go out and chase a bag, that's totally his prerogative. I don't know what his draft prospects are. I venture a guess that right now they're not super duper fantastic, clearly, because he could leave to the draft right now if he wanted to, and he's going to stick around in college for another year. Get, $3.5, $4 million. That's life-changing money. and go off and, probably play for a Big Ten or SEC school. We can talk about, schools that Josh Hoover could go to in a little bit. But I think this is totally his prerogative to do what he wants, do what he thinks is best. So yeah, all of that to say, I'd kind of gone through this thought process in the, the week or so that Kendall Brawls has been gone. So this was not super surprising to me.
It was also kind of a warning sign with Sonny Dykes saying in the press conference that, they're trying to, I think he said, like, raise the funds to keep Josh Hoover, trying to meet that mark. And I was like, okay, are they going to? And I think that's pretty safe as kind of a factor. I'm sure the money thing. It didn't work out. So it's unfortunate. He leaves Fort Worth as one of the, statistically top 5 best quarterbacks in program history. Now, obviously that's up for debate, when you break it down, but, he certainly could have set multiple records at TCU had he stayed another year. But, again, if, as fans, I've seen a lot of Twitter that they're mad at Josh Hoover and that he lied and he should have stayed and whatever. And you can be upset. I think it depends on where he goes. Is where my level of, like, I guess, anger or would be at. Because we talked about you said this before. Like, if he goes to Texas Tech, oh yeah, it's going to bring out a lot of anger with TCU fans.
For sure.
But yeah, he leaves TCU 5th all time in program history in passing yards and passing touchdowns. So there's no doubt statistically he was a machine. But yeah, imagine if he goes to Tech.
We're not going to talk about that right now. Tech is probably in the market for a quarterback. Will Hammond is going to be waiting in the wings. Obviously, he won a game for them on the road at Utah. Don't know what they think about him. He tore his ACL earlier this year, so he is not a factor for them. Baron Morton, I don't think, has any eligibility left. But yeah, Tech is in the market for a quarterback. We can talk about after we get done talking about the TCU things where the quarterback transfer market sits and where Josh Hoover and where TCU fits into all of that. But if Josh Hoover stayed another year, he would have most likely become, he would have passed Trevon Boykin and Andy Dalton for passing yards all time, because those two are in the 10,000s. And there's no doubt in my mind that Josh Hoover would have around the same amount of passing yards he did this year, which was 3,472, which was 6th in the country. He has 71 touchdown passes, which is tied for 3rd in program history behind Boykin and Max Duggan. You're right. Like, statistically, he is right up there with the pantheon of TCU quarterbacks. Like, when I think of best quarterbacks in my lifetime for TCU, it's Andy Dalton, Trevon Boykin, and Max Duggan. And he was right there with all of them statistically. And the only kind of, thing on his resume that puts him below those players is the win-loss record. TCU simply did not win enough games with Josh Hoover as their quarterback. And if you want to make the argument for why TCU should just, part ways and move on from Josh Hoover, it's that the thing that matters the most at the end of the day is TCU winning championships and TCU winning big time games. And they didn't do that with Josh Hoover as their quarterback. And whether that's indicative of a lack of, like with Josh, whether that's a Josh problem or a TCU problem is something we can debate. And I'm open to that debate. I think it's more of a kind of a symbiotic relationship. And at the end of the day, TCU just didn't win enough. And so now, parting ways, maybe it'll be good for everybody just to have a change of scenery, just to change of pace, something else.
There were a multitude of factors of why TCU wasn't successful over the last few years. Again, 8-4 is not terrible. It could have been a lot worse, but I'm not going to put all the blame on Josh Hoover for why TCU wasn't
for
able
sure.
to
I don't want to make it sound like I'm doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I got you. But yeah, like if you look at it, Josh Hoover has had a lot of great performances over the years. He's had a couple bad ones as well, but he didn't have a moment at TCU where I was like, dang. Like, he's had some great throws, he's had some great plays here and there, but he didn't have his like big moment against like a team that against a team that would have changed TCU season. It felt like every big game that TCU's had in the Josh Hoover era, they've come up short. Except for when you play SMU. Maybe this year was kind of a big game for them and they won that. But you know what I'm saying? Like it didn't feel like he really just
I
had that
totally jive
moment.
with that point, and I'll take it a step further. We can go through specific moments from this season, maybe if you want to. Let's go to Arizona State. TCU is tied with the ball in late in the fourth quarter, a chance to drive down the field and take the lead. Josh Hoover fumbles it, gives Arizona State the ball inside the 20. They kick a game-winning field goal. Then TCU actually gets the ball back again with like a minute and 20 seconds left, no timeouts. Josh throws a pick.
Yeah.
That loss is not all on Josh Hoover, but he had an opportunity to make a moment, like you just said, and deliver TCU a victory, and he wasn't able to do it. Is there any others? Maybe this year. I can think of last year against SMU was a disaster fest on many scenarios from Josh. The fumble 6. He threw some interceptions against SMU last year. Threw a pick 6 against Kansas State this year. Also had the fumble 6 against Kansas State this year.
Baylor
for sure. Even though
end.
TCU won that game, but definitely were some moments where he came up short. And I don't want to make it sound like we're crapping on Josh Hoover. I just think that there are reasons why I think that this split is good for both. It's, I think, also bad for both in many different departments, because I think TCU could have won a lot of games with Josh Hoover next year and whatnot, and he could have become a TCU great in terms of the statistics. But what sets Josh Hoover apart from the quarterbacks we mentioned earlier, Max Duggan, Trevon Boykin, Andy Dalton, didn't win enough games. And I can think of tons of different moments from those three players in their TCU career of just game-winning drives and stuff like that, or performances in big-time games that differ. Like they separate themselves from Josh Hoover in that regard. And that is why I think for a lot of TCU fans, this breakup is obviously hard. Like it's hard to swallow, but at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe it is just, and maybe, the grass is not always greener on the other side. So I say this always with, some air of caution in my voice of like, maybe whoever TCU's option is next year might not be as good as Josh Hoover, but maybe just moving on is the best, and seeing what TCU can get, seeing if they can figure out other ways to win, besides throwing it 400 times in a game is kind of what I'm trying to say here. It's turning the page.
And he has made, and again, like I think it's fair to be a little critical of Josh Hoover. I mean, it can't all just be praise for him because he had a turnover issue while at TCU, but definitely just to kind of go back to some of the highs, he was a large part of why so many receivers have been successful, whether it's Jack Besh or or Eric McAllister, Jordan Dwyer, multiple guys, JP Richardson, they were successful under Josh Hoover. And another thing that I think we haven't mentioned is his leadership. Based off on what we've heard from his teammates, from the coaches, is that he is a born leader, a proven leader that can lead a group, and they believed in him. And so obviously from that standpoint, you're going to that can come in, take the reins, and try to live up to that level of leadership that Josh Hoover brought, because that is obviously something that is integral to is so vital to the success of a football program, is having a quarterback that stands on good moral grounds and can represent the university well and lead a team well. Um, we've seen we're right now seeing a very talented quarterback um, kind of lose a lot of hype and uh, draft stock because of the way that he's acting. Um, and I'm talking about Diego Pavia. He's not carried himself very well, so that's an important thing. Is how can the next quarterback, whoever it is, whether internal or external, lead this group with Sonny Dykes and represent the university well? Because Josh Hoover did that exceptionally well.
Amen to that. He did. He was fantastic at that, and there were moments this season, right, where it looked like things were going to go downhill, and never for a moment did I hear anyone disparage the quarterback in a press conference or anything like that. Even when he was not playing his best, um, they were always lifting him up, and he was always lifting them up, and so that is definitely a positive to Josh, and just he was Sonny Dykes' first signing at TCU after Sonny got the job. And so I think that he carried that responsibility pretty well throughout his career here, because he was kind of overlooked through the quarterback cycle. He was committed to go to Indiana back when Indiana stunk. Tom Allen was the head coach there, and like that was not going to be a place I think where he could have thrived. And he came here and he thrived for sure. And he's going to go out. He's going to get a lot of money from a big time school, and we're going to wish him well. Obviously, hope that he does the best rest of his career, unless it's at Texas Tech. I say that kind of jokingly, but at the same time, would really hate to see him in red and black. But we wish him well, and hope that he can succeed and do well in the future, but also hoping that TCU gets a quarterback in here, whether that's internal or external. Maybe we can move on to talking about some other options now for the Frogs that can give TCU, a lot of wins.
There are a lot of options now for TCU. Josh Hoover does become one of the most coveted quarterbacks in the portal. There is no doubt that he's going to have no shortage of suitors wanting him. Indiana could certainly be a school that, say, hey, come back to us. We'd love to have you. That would be obviously a huge upgrade for him, for Josh Hoover, getting with Coach Signetti and obviously a team that's really talented with Indiana. I don't know what the suitors will look like, what the teams he'll consider. Location, I'm sure, is important and all that, but
yeah, we can. We don't need to go through where he could go. I mean,
yeah, but
there's
TCU,
a lot of places that need quarterbacks. TCU is one of them now.
Yeah, TCU is now in need of a quarterback, and there's already been some top level quarterbacks entering the transfer portal. But I think Seth and I both agree there's one quarterback in particular that would be very exciting to have in Fort Worth. Who is that quarterback, Seth?
Well, barring TCU going internal with
Yeah.
Adam Schobel, which we don't know what they think of him right now, but barring that not happening, if TCU should go the transfer route, there's a quarterback who plays off I-35W just like TCU does. It's just up a little bit up the road in Denton, Texas. Drew Mestemaker, he is intending to enter the portal as well whenever that opens in January 2nd. And I think that should TCU be able to throw enough money at that kid. And if you haven't heard Drew Mestemaker's story, I really, really suggest you go out and seek it out. There's a good CBS Sports article about him that is really, really good. And should Mestemaker come, we'll obviously talk about him a lot, but he is awesome. He's kind of like Josh Hoover 2.0. He loves to sling it around the yard as well. And I think that TCU could do really good things with him as their quarterback.
That would be exciting. There is also the possibility that he follows his coach on over to Oklahoma State. That certainly could be a possibility, but man, that would be really exciting. You know, he obviously had a great season for UNT. Um, Very talented arm, and if he gets some good wide receivers here, that could be a lot of fun, and that would be exciting. I think that for me, again, we can both agree that's kind of top priority for us and what we would love to see. Some other options,
This is
DJ
total.
Lagway.
Yeah, this is DJ. This is us just like throwing crap at the wall now. DJ Lagway is one of those names.
DJ Lagway is one of them. We made a joke about it like a couple weeks ago about DJ Lagway being the quarterback at TCU. Obviously, previously at Florida, did not have a great season. Um, Again, a lot of circumstances. No one really had a great year over there with the Gators, but that would be hilarious. It would be so fun. It would be a great, I don't know
It
how I'd feel, but
it'd be one of those things where like, he obviously had a lot of issues, and a lot of that is circumstantial, right? He didn't have a spring or like fall camp because he was hurt. And then the system with Billy Napier just really wasn't jiving. And then, Billy gets fired. And then it's like, okay, a lot of things just not going the way of DJ Lagway. But even then, there was still some flashes. He had some really good throws in that game against Georgia, I remember, where Florida almost was able to pull off that big upset. It'd definitely be a thing where like you're bringing him in and you're like, the thing with coaches is like they always think that they can succeed. They never take a job thinking they can fail. They never bring in a player thinking he's going to suck. So it would be Sonny Dykes and Gordy Samus betting on themselves saying, we can fix this guy, is essentially what it would be. Because the thing with DJ is really high floor, probably a much lower ceiling than a lot of the other guys we're going to talk about, or much lower high ceiling, low floor is what I meant to say, than a lot of the other guys we're going to talk about, because I've seen DJ Lagway make some throws that I don't think a lot of humans in college football can make. There's a reason he was a 5-star prospect. I've also seen him do things that make me want to tear my hair out. And if I was a Florida fan, I would have been very frustrated. So it's one of those things where like, we got to fix some things. He's got to get healthy as well. So again, this is not reporting. This is just us doing what college football fans do, just throwing out names. DJ Lagway's out there. I think DJ Lagway personally is going to get a big time offer from probably a pretty big time school that thinks it can do exactly what I just said. They think they can fix them. And I don't know where that could very well be in the SEC. And if it's an SEC school, they'll probably take it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm curious. Where do you think, as far as a destination goes for quarterbacks, like where does TCU rank? Because new offensive coordinator, they're losing their top wide receiver to the draft, but still a relatively young offense. Where do you think TCU ranks amongst a lot of teams in need of a quarterback?
How much are they willing to pay is my thought process on that. I'd say below most Big Ten and SEC schools, if not every SEC school, maybe with the exception of Mississippi State and Arkansas, and maybe South Carolina. I don't know. I know, like 30s or 40s.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit lower than that. But again, it just depends on how much they're willing to pay to a guy. Because again, Texas Tech, I would have told you that they were like in the 60s or 70s for a place I would like to play for. Again, that's kind of me having my TCU hat on. It's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but if they're willing to pay a couple $1,000,000 to come to Lubbock, you'll go to Lubbock. So it all depends on how much they're willing to pay. But I think that it is an attractive place for a quarterback for a variety of reasons. I know that McAllister and Dwyer might not be back either. I don't know what his eligibility is, but TCU's had some really good receivers here and has shown that they can have an offense where a quarterback can thrive. And so I think that there would be some quarterbacks out there that would see that and say, I like that. So, and with what Gordy Samus was able to do with some quarterbacks as of late, I think that kind of track record speaks for itself as well.
Yeah, it's not the worst place, and it's definitely not the best, but I think there is some intrigue there with the success that Josh Hoover had, with the success that Max Duggan had at TCU. There is something there that could be intriguing. Obviously, again, more quarterbacks will enter the portal. It's only December 19th. The college football playoff starts today, with the portal officially opening on January 2nd. So more names will be added. Brendan Sorsby out of Cincinnati was one that was recently added. Dylan Raiola out of Nebraska
Can you
is
imagine?
another one. Uh, I don't know about that one. We'll see though. But
Bo Pribula
again,
entered yesterday. Saw that.
yeah, from Missouri. Yeah, so there's definitely options, and again, they could go internal. Uh, Ken Seals will definitely not. I think he's a senior
Yeah, he's
anyways,
gone. He's done.
so he's
But he will
done.
start the bowl game most likely.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Obviously, Hoover will not play in the Alamo Bowl. We'll talk about that. We're coming up on 11 days from the Alamo Bowl, so we'll kind of talk about it a little more now that the circumstances have changed for the Frogs. They could go to Adam Schobel. Obviously, was a really exciting recruit coming in, and so they could certainly turn to him. Although he's young, he was a freshman. Well, he didn't play, so I'm sure he'll be redshirted.
Redshirted. Hey, Josh
Um,
Hoover was young as well, and they turned to him too, and we saw how that turned out. So it's not necessarily a thing of like, it just depends on what they think of him. They've got more eyes on him than we have. So just depends on what they think of him. And my kind of thought process is, though, for this season in terms of where they're going to go, this is based on, things I've heard, but also things, I'm just seeing is Sonny probably views this year as somewhat make or break. And are you going to make a bet on a redshirt freshman quarterback to deliver you a season that you need to keep your job potentially?
yeah, it's and that's obviously assuming he stays. Adam Schobel. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't.
He might transfer as well. Who knows?
Yeah, so there's just a lot happening, and you can't bank on him staying. Obviously, would love to keep him around, but he could end up transferring. It's still very early in the process, so a lot of things can happen. We're just kind of speculating at this point, but we did want to talk about the confirmed news, and that is that Josh Hoover's hitting the transfer portal. And look, we wish him the best of luck wherever he goes. And uh, definitely a talented quarterback, and made his mark here in Fort Worth, and again represented the university well. And he's going to be great for whichever program takes him in, and hopefully he can boost his draft stock and continue to play football beyond college at the end of the day.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I echo all those sentiments.
Yeah. So we are, again, still December 30th against USC in the Alamo Bowl, still a little ways away. This game is not going to look as pretty as it once did for the Frogs, unfortunately. You will be there, Seth. So
I will add, maybe less so for USC. Their top two wide receivers are, I think, not playing in this game either. So it's definitely not going to be full strength on full strength for either side. But Jade Maeva for USC, I believe, will be playing for the Trojans. So they'll have their quarterback. TCU, again, most likely will have 11 days to get Ken Seals ready for this, because listen, as of yesterday morning, Josh Hoover was at practice. So I do want to make that clear. Like, he was practicing for TCU, probably with the first teamers. And now you got to put Ken Seals into that. And it's not like Ken Seals hasn't been around. He's been here for a couple of years. So he knows what's going on. But you throw in all these things, and we can obviously talk about this later. But no Josh Hoover, no Eric McAllister, no Jordan Dwyer, who got injured this past week at practice. He had a foot injury. He's not going to be playing. No, a new quarterback in Ken Seals, we assume. And who's calling the plays?
yeah, Sonny Dykes, probably. Yeah.
Maybe. All I'm going to say is the result of this game should not matter for how you grade Sonny Dykes end of this season, because it is not TCU at its best, nor is it USC for that matter, but definitely TCU more so.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting game, and still looking forward to it for sure. Obviously, a big stage for TCU, and USC is a good program, so it'll be fun. But it's just going to look a lot different. So that'll finish things up here for this episode, talking about Josh Hoover's departure. Obviously, coming yesterday on Thursday, December 18th, and so it's shocking news to some, maybe not to others, but it is the truth and the reality here in Fort Worth. We will have a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback and potentially more. So we'll break down any other TCU breaking news as it arrives right here on Believe in TCU. You can follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube page, or listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, all at Believe in TCU. So for Seth Dowdle, I'm Zion Trammell. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. And as always, go Frogs.